This is breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Las Vegas Paiute Tribal Smoke and Cigar Shop.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jen Ah with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. We're getting ready to take you to a press conference held by Governor Steve Sisolak and several experts to discuss an innovation plan. This is an innovation zone where tech leaders would get the chance to be able to form their own governments within our state. Now, here's what we know so far about these proposed innovation zones. They come from a draft of proposed legislation obtained by the Review-Journal this month. According to that draft, the zones would let tech companies essentially form separate local governments here in Nevada. Those governments would have the same authority as a county. They would be able to impose taxes, form school districts, justice courts, and provide government services. They would have a 3-member board of supervisors that would carry the same powers as a board of county commissioners. Now we're going to wait and see during this press conference what more the governor has to say about this plan. Now the tech company setting up this zone would play a significant role in deciding exactly who those leaders are in this form of government. These zones during his State of the State was addressed by the governor back in January. And the governor pitched this as a plan to really bring a lot of tech companies to our state, hopefully without using tax abatements and public funding. Now, there are other leaders expected to speak here as well, including the Economic Development Office. Now, according to the draft legislation, companies that want to set up an innovation zone would have to submit an application to the government first to develop these innovation zones, and it would not be easy. They would need to invest at least $250 million and have a plan in place to invest an additional $1 billion over the next 10 years into this innovation zone. Now, this zone would be required to report to the legislature, reveal its capital investments, physical progress on developing infrastructure, and have an estimate on the number of people employed in the innovation zone, and provide information on the economic impact from the zone itself. Now, this press conference is set to start here in a few minutes. It was expected to start at 1:30, so we'll be bringing that to you live here in a few. Now, as we mentioned before, this is a really new idea that was presented from the governor during his State of the State address about a month ago in January, where he talked about finding ways to lure tech companies into our state. He wants to really grow our economy this way. And this is an idea where the tech companies essentially would be able to form their own governments, where they would have the powers that a county would have, like Clark County. They would have their own board of supervisors, who would have similar powers to the board of county commissioners. Okay, it looks like the announcement is just about to start. Is that correct? Okay, so we're going to hand it over to the governor and other state leaders right now.
Be able to watch and follow along. Just some couple reminders before we get started. If you are not one of our speakers, if you would not mind keeping your video and your audio off, we will have a short opportunity for Q&A with the press.
Hey everyone, this is Megan Levy from Governor Sisolak's office. You should be able to hear me and not see me. That is how I prefer. We'll get started in just a minute. Our team is taking this live on YouTube. So
I can't have both.
Hold on one second, Governor. Hold on. We're going to get this figured out. Just 1 second. We'll be good. Okay, great. Sorry about that, everyone. So it looks like we are live on YouTube. Again, if you're not a speaker, if you could keep your camera and your audio off till we get to the Q&A. Sorry for the disruption and a little bit of a late start. But at this time, I'd like to kick it over to Governor Sisolak to make some introductory remarks, and then we'll hear from GoEd Executive Director Michael Brown and Jeremy Aguero. So Governor, go ahead.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me and the other presenters who are going to be explaining the proposal to create innovation zones in Nevada. This proposal is an exciting, unprecedented concept that has the potential to position Nevada as a global center of advanced technology and innovation while helping to create immediate positive economic impact and shape the economy of the future. Director Michael Brown of GoEd and Jeremy Aguero of Applied Analysis will discuss the concept and the proposed legislation in detail following my remarks. But I wanted to first kick off the roundtable with some of the big picture reasons why I am so excited in proposing this bold and admittedly non-traditional approach to economic development. I don't have to explain to this group the unique situation the world, and particularly Nevada, finds itself in at this moment. We are still reeling from an economic crisis caused by a worldwide health crisis. An economic crisis that hit Nevada as hard, if not harder, than any other state due to the frailty of our economic structure and, of course, our reliance on the tourism and hospitality industry. This state has talked for years about economic diversification and expanding our economy into areas beyond casinos and gaming. Positive strides have definitely been made in recent years, yet Nevadans have once again found ourselves to be incredibly vulnerable in an economic downturn. And our statewide economic vulnerabilities have hurt our most vulnerable Nevadans the most. In short, what we've been doing has not worked. It is this reality that pushed me to propose the innovation zones concept. As we've learned in the past, an emergency requires us to throw out the past tried and true, discard how we've always done it manuals, and move on. These times call for a more urgent pace, confronting the reality of this pandemic, moving forward boldly in rebuilding our economy, getting people back to work. We cannot wait for economic recovery to come to us. We must accelerate and pursue innovative ways to inject Nevada with new and organic economic growth and more jobs. Nevada must look for unique and different ways to improve, expand, and yes, diversify our economy. Government and the private sector need to think collectively, outside the box, to bring the innovation, the creativity, and quite frankly, the investment into Nevada that we need and that we deserve. And I believe innovation zones are that opportunity for these two worlds to work together to achieve this goal. Innovation zones are a unique and bold idea that I understand would not be immediately received with open arms. But it is my hope that starting today, we can have open, honest, productive conversations about how this could work to help Nevada, to help Nevadans. Not simply write it off before the legislation's goals, mechanics, and consequences can be discussed and debated through the traditional legislative process. This is what I will ask of the stakeholders who engage on this bill. I'm not afraid of the hard questions, and I'm not afraid to listen to those who believe the concept is proposed is flawed. I just ask that all involved understand that the end goal is a massive economic development investment in Nevada and a chance to set down a marker that Nevada is the blockchain technology center of the world. To set down a marker that Nevada is the blockchain technology of the world. And this goal can be accomplished without resorting to any incentives, tax credits, or public sector investment. Now a little bit about the concept I'm proposing. An innovation zone is a self-governing community organized much like a traditional city or county, but wholly focused on the development of innovative and advanced technologies. It is not, quote, a company town. That's not what it is. Examples of these innovations include blockchain, autonomous technology, robotics, artificial intelligence, wireless technology, biometrics, and renewable resource technology. At the heart of this proposal is a structure that's where the governance of an innovation zone can evolve and develop at the speed of these new technologies while integrating them into the function and needs of the community. This proposal details a process to create these innovation zones with clear requirements from the applicant and a sustainable path for their growth over time. While the private sector would be responsible for development and infrastructure, our state and our residents will reap the benefits in the form of development investments, jobs for Nevadans, and new streams of revenues. We will keep the standards high and hold applicants accountable every step of the way. The major requirements for initiating and pursuing an innovation zone are significant, and they include an immediate investment of $250 million in land and infrastructure, a further commitment to invest at least $1 billion over a 10-year period to develop a smart city, and ownership of a large parcel of undeveloped land outside existing towns or cities as the site of the innovation zone. Director Brown and Mr. Aguero will now discuss this proposal in detail, as well as the potential massive, and I mean massive, economic impacts of the Blockchains LLC proposal should this legislation make my desk. I'm going to kick it over to Director Brown for a few words.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Businesses have spent the last year scrambling to adapt to the extraordinary circumstances of the pandemic. They have delayed capital investment, but 2021 is the year of transition, and the next normal will be different. It will not mean returning to the conditions of the 2019 economy. The pandemic and the resulting economic disruption is bringing the future faster. We are now in a period of great acceleration. Technology and the digitized are thriving and changing the world. Think, in the last 12 months, the pandemic has changed delivery of education, healthcare, physical business models, and government. This kind of Zoom-based roundtable would not have been something that we would have even considered a year ago. SRI International, that's completed the state's recovery and resiliency plan, has said that Nevada is a place to experiment. Nevada's pioneer frontier spirit, its Pacific time zone, its proximity to Silicon Valley, is creating a once-in-a-century opportunity to lead through the creation of technology and through an innovation zone. And with that, I would like to walk through some of the core statistics that we've worked with Jeremy to prepare. I think, Jeremy, you control that. Yes, thank you. So we'll move to the next slide. So we are looking at, as the governor said, an immediate investment of $250 million. At a time when businesses are very stingy with the deployment of capital, this would be a welcome in relief to Nevada at this point in time. But this is a 75-year project. It's a large master plan project. And you can see that in just the development of this project, we would have a direct output of $9 billion. And then when you add the indirect and induced, to $16.4 billion. Direct wages of $4.9 billion, rising up to $7.2 billion with indirect and induced. And direct employment of 79,000 with indirect of 16,000 and induced employment of 28,000. We're talking 123,000 jobs over the course of the development of this project. This is a game changer for Nevada. To the next slide. And then when it's operating, when it's functioning, we're looking at 2.2 billion of direct output. We're looking at induced and indirect, bringing it up to 4.6 billion. You know, it's not often that I get to talk in billions. Something new to me in life here. Direct wages of 1.1 billion, bringing it up to 1.8 billion in total wages. And then direct professional support staff, technology-based employment of up to 40,000 here in Nevada. Opportunity is knocking here with a multi-generational employment opportunity that does not involve abatements and it does not involve incentives. It does place the risk on the developer and not on the state. Now, innovation zones such as this are not new. They have been experimented with across the country. Brookings Institute has been writing about them since 2009. Several are functioning, but they tend to function in cities, in urban renewal efforts. This is an opportunity for a greenfield investment. I say often I would never trade Nevada's borders. We have this wonderful linkage to the Pacific Rim, to Silicon Valley, to major markets in the Western United States. And this is an opportunity that Nevada has to seriously consider. And my colleague and longtime friend, Jeremy, will now walk through some of the more particulars of how this would roll out.
Director Brown, Governor, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. As Director Brown indicated, my job here is to talk a little bit about the mechanics of the innovation zone as it's currently proposed in the draft legislation. Really, it starts with an application process. And that application process was outlined a bit by the governor. It was discussed a little bit even by Director Brown in terms of the type of project that's being brought forward. But those are arguably the most extensive requirements for any economic development program that we've seen in the history of Nevada. What does it require? The ownership of 50,000 uninhabited acres in the state of Nevada, a prior investment of $250 million in infrastructure within the project itself, a commitment to $1 billion within the next 10 years, but it also requires a qualified developer, and it requires a specialized knowledge in an identified innovative technology. The governor outlined what those may be. Again, the idea of the innovation driving that application. Arguably as important as any of the elements that are included is the concept that in order to qualify to have an innovation zone or to develop within an innovation zone, it requires that a new tax or fee be created. As the director said, the concept here isn't one of abatements or incentives or anything along those lines. As a matter of fact, it's quite exactly the opposite. In order for an applicant to be able to apply and be awarded the opportunity to develop in an innovation zone, it must go to the legislature and have a industry-specific tax imposed upon that innovative technology. The goal here, again, being somewhat different, I think, as the director indicated, this idea that tomorrow is going to be somewhat different than yesterday. The idea here being that our economic development, economic diversification, perhaps better, must also be accompanied by fiscal diversification in the state of Nevada. Beyond that, the next step is really, once that application is approved, what happens then? There's an interim period in which the governor appoints 3 supervisors, a board of supervisors. And the governor said it extremely well. I'll reiterate it here. These supervisors must be independent of the applicant. As a matter of fact, this is the creation of a new political subdivision within the state of Nevada. It's not a political subdivision that's controlled by blockchains or any other individual applicant. It has to be, as a matter of fact, independent of that. They can have those supervisors must be independent of the applicant. They are also subject to Nevada's ethics laws. They are subject to the open meeting law. They are subject to any other rules and requirements that any other county commissioner or any city council person would otherwise be required. See, this is a new political subdivision that has been created. Now, obviously, there are other similar political subdivisions. We have counties here in the state of Nevada. We have cities. We even have places like Carson City, which are kind of fall in between. The goal here, and the reason that it's structured the way that it is to put up a big flag that says Nevada is open for innovation. We're creating something that's different. Nevada is creating something that is unique in that regard. During that application process, the applicant goes through the process of building and zoning and developing everything. They become, in that way, independent of the host jurisdiction or the host county that they are in. In that, however, during this period, they do not collect property taxes or sales taxes or anything along those lines, but rather go through the process of licensing businesses and those type of things to try and get that activity going. What is critical here is that this development starts with vacant land. And so, like any beginning to some type of community, the goal is that you have to plant those seeds that are ultimately going to develop. What happens then as they continue down that line? When they continue down that line, the applicant at some point, probably relatively near in the ultimate development horizon, elects to move forward and elects to take over all of the services that any local or regional government would take over. They are required to provide those. At the same time, they will generate the revenues, sales tax, property tax, those type of things will inure to the benefit of the innovation zone and will need to be utilized by the innovation zone to provide everything from every type of service that any state or any local government or county government, regional government would otherwise provide. In that, a couple of key notes there. Number one, again, no incentives, no abatements. Every business that's located within the innovation zone will pay every tax that any other business in the state of Nevada will pay. Every resident that lives in an innovation zone will pay every tax that any resident of the state of Nevada would otherwise pay, as well as this industry specific tax that I talked about. Importantly, however, any revenue that would otherwise be paid that would go to the state to provide general government services statewide or provide for K through 12 education or anything else will continue to be paid, continue to inure to the benefit of the state for exactly those purposes. In addition to that, any taxes that were generated and were going to the host county before this election will continue to go to that host county into perpetuity. The final element of the bill is really the when it transitions from a government that is appointed by the governor to a government that is elected just like any other government that we would have in the state of Nevada. This happens when the registrar of voters identifies that there have been 100 registered voters located within the innovation zone. At which time, both those supervisors that had previously been appointed by the governor and any other government officials that would otherwise provide services, oversight, administration of the zone must be duly elected through a process just like anywhere else in the state of Nevada. The objective here and the structure of the bill is designed to provide an opportunity, designed to provide an incubator where this technology can be tested and deployed and rolled out. And ultimately, the goal here being to create something that can function and continue to grow and expand and provide that type of opportunity in the state of Nevada. With that, Governor, with that, Director Brown, I appreciate the opportunity to provide a bit of an overview relative to the mechanics of how an innovation zone would work, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions should they come up.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Director Brown, and thank you, Governor. This is Megan Delaney, Governor Sisolak's Communications Director. We have time for a few questions from the members of the press before the Governor has some closing remarks. If you've been on one of these Zoom calls with me before, you know I prefer to use the raise hand function. If you're having trouble finding that, if you have a reactions button on your Zoom, you should be able to raise your hand in there. I see Colton from the RJ has his hand raised, so we'll take Colton as the first question, and we'll do Sam from the AP after that.
Hey there, can you hear me all right?
We can hear you, Colton. Go ahead.
Perfect. So Director Brown mentioned that other similar types of these zones to this proposal aren't new and do operate within various cities. Why does this concept of this current concept for an innovation zone, why does it have to have its own form of government? Why can't local governments here in Nevada support this type of structure?
Jeremy, I think you started to get at this in some of your comments. Would you like to take a crack at that question?
Sure, I'd be happy to if I can offer just a little bit. Colton, it's a very good question. I mean, and the reality is I think that the structure of governments in the state of Nevada, we're not talking about retrofitting a community with some type of innovative technology. We're talking about building a city from the ground all the way up. And this isn't an indictment of any particular jurisdiction, be that Story County in the case of blockchains or anywhere else in the state of Nevada. But you're talking about orders of magnitude different in terms of that technology. I mean, so much of what has been developed in the state of Nevada has been built to the scale of the automobile. This is the way that we've done it traditionally, and the amount of resources, the amount of requirement, the amount that it would ultimately potentially transition the nature of any individual county is significant. You know, when we're talking just about the blockchains project and respecting the fact that this could be very different in different areas of the state, should one of these come up, we're talking about a county that has relatively little in population and an innovation zone that would be substantially larger than that in terms of order of magnitude. So whether it's a practical matter in terms of just the lift that would be required to administer something of this size, whether it's the innovative element associated with it, the fact that it's just different, or the fact that the development of something on the order of, in this case, blockchains has acquired about 67,000 acres, about 20,000 of those acres would be part of this smart city in terms of its order of magnitude relative to the host jurisdiction. I don't think there's just one reason, but I think there's many reasons why having a new political subdivision makes logical sense in terms of administering it in an effective way.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks, Colton, for the question. We'll go to Sam Metz from the AP, and then Laura Bliss, I think, with Bloomberg. So Sam and then Laura. Sorry, Laura, if I got that wrong.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Sam. Go ahead.
So thank you for taking my question. The Innovation Zone's PowerPoint says revenue potential depends in part on the relative size of the transaction base. Director Brown and Mr. Aguero, how much commercial activity has to happen with this private stablecoin to meet these projections? Can you walk me through the assumptions behind the forecasts? And also, how is it possible using a distributed ledger to be able to identify Nevada-only transactions and accordingly tax them?
There's some heavy questions in there, Sam. Jeremy, did you want to try to go first with a couple of those? We might need to follow up offline with some of that.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. In terms, Sam, I'm really glad that you sort of asked the first half of the question, because I think we get this so often in terms of this conversation, right? Stablecoin is something that requires a blockchain in order to provide, but blockchain technology is not cryptocurrency. That's just one utility of that cryptocurrency. When we're talking about the ability of making, and I think the governor said it right, sort of making Nevada the center, the nucleus of the blockchain technology that will serve Nevada, the United States, and even the world, we're talking about something a lot greater than a cryptocurrency. Right? Stablecoin can affect, is something that cryptocurrency is something that we hear a lot about in the media, but blockchains has so many other applications that are out there. We're talking about medical records, you're talking about identification, you're talking about things like storage and processing of inventory. It's a different type of database, as you're probably well aware, that is innovative in terms of using the chronological nature of adding blocks to a chain in order to provide that. So when we think about it in terms of the revenue estimates that are being yielded, it's not just related to the cryptocurrency. It's related to any of the transactions that would add a block to the chain. It's a processing fee, probably better than calling it a tax, as a result of any activity that would otherwise take place. I commonly like to explain this to people, like when we think about the utility of a credit card, for example. And I use my credit card and I go down to my local gas station and I swipe and I put gas into my vehicle, right? There's a processing fee that's associated with that. And that takes place somewhere else that I never even see as a consumer. It's very much the same sort of idea. It's not always a monetary transaction when we think about it in terms of blockchains. As a matter of fact, it's probably most often not going to be a monetary transaction that you and I might normally think in a retail context. That's certainly okay, and that's what the at least in this case, the blockchain technology is trying to ultimately deploy. Now, the second half of your question in terms of the distributed ledger, right? Ultimately, the concept is that all of that processing will happen within the state of Nevada. As you're probably well aware, there's different types of blockchain technology, distributed, centralized, those type of things that are all different. I'm not, as Megan said, it's probably not the right place to go into the specific details that are there, but I can tell you that what Blockchains has expressed to me is that their goal is to build that innovation directly into this smart city and to utilize the platform of the development, that is the master plan community that Director Brown outlined, to allow for companies to test that within that platform. Now, the last part of your question, again, without trying to go into a whole lot of detail, is in the presentation deck, you saw there were a number of industries that were outlined there. The goal ultimately being to identify industries where something like a cryptocurrency could potentially be utilized and rolled out, or other technologies that we may talk about, test that within Nevada, ultimately to roll it out to a broader number of industries, and hopefully at some point, I think is their aspiration, both nationally and globally at that point, at which case that revenue generation would be significant.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Sam, for the question. We have time for a couple more. I know we're not going to get to everyone. We'll have some closing remarks from the governor. And again, this is the first, I think, of many conversations. So we'll do Laura from Bloomberg and Michelle Rindels from the Indy.
Hi, thank you so much. I have a two-part question. One is specific. I'm wondering if there's any scenario where some part of the 50,000 acres of uninhabited land is publicly owned and transferred. And the second part of my question is about the environmental impacts of greenfield developments. Would there be any requirements to limit greenhouse gas emissions, given the fact that new roads would presumably need to be built to accommodate this kind of new development?
Thank you for the question.
Megan, you want me to?
I was just gonna, go ahead, Governor, if you'd like to go.
Okay, let me try to answer that a little bit if I could, Laura. One of the best things that, first off, all of the land is privately owned. There's no public land included in here. All of the land is privately owned rather. As far as transportation, that's the ideal thing about the innovation zone. They're working with a blank palette. It's a clean canvas right now. It will have the best transportation, clean slate energy that's available. And the idea is to have a carbon neutral, renewable grid in the blockchain, in the innovation zone. That can be done with this technology. And it's important to understand that because it's new, because it's cutting edge, these are things that the applications of the technology are limitless. We cannot even imagine what the technology could be, but this will make it easier to have the carbon neutral footprint and renewable grid, and the transportation would all be done within the confines of the innovation zone with these resources.
Thank you, Governor. We'll go to Michelle Rendells for the last question we'll be able to take today before the Governor's closing remarks. Again, we'll be able to talk about this topic a lot more in the coming weeks and months as we move through the process. So, Michelle, we'll do the last question from you, and then the Governor has closing remarks.
Hi, Governor. These zones are by definition built in uninhabited areas. Is it responsible to be promoting such large-scale development in areas where water is already so scarce? And do you have concerns about how supplying a 36,000 person city is going to be affecting the environment?
We're always concerned about water in Nevada. Michelle, you know that. I mean, whether it's north or south or urban or rural, there's a water shortage. They're responsible for providing water to the innovation zone. They'll have to buy the water rights, come up with the water rights in order to do that. But environmentally, this is the most sound concept you can possibly have. I mean, you're starting fresh. You won't have the waste. You're going to have the technology, which makes the transportation better. You're talking about potential for autonomous vehicles, and you're talking about, like I say, a carbon neutral footprint and a renewable grid totally, so that it won't be reliant upon fossil fuels. This is everything that the environment absolutely needs. And it, at the same time, is protecting the state without what we're facing with other governors and the massive incentives and abatements that are having to be given out in order to attract these industries. We're not risking anything as a state on this. There is zero risk for the state of Nevada. I mean, the developer is putting up the money. They're taking the risk. The state and its residents are getting the benefit.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Michelle, for the question. I think at this point, if there are any additional questions, I see some hands raised. Feel free to reach out to me after we hop off this call. But Governor, I think you had some concluding remarks before we end the Zoom today.
I did. Thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. As we work to diversify our economy, grow our skilled workforce, and create the conditions that we need for Nevada to thrive, innovation zones can play a key role in making sure our state can be a place where the businesses and technologies of tomorrow begin. There's no denying it. This is a big idea, but our state is not afraid of thinking big and doing big. It's who we are. We have a long history of embracing innovative creators and bold ideas that others dismiss too quickly. Unlike others, Nevadans have always embraced and daring the bold. I look forward to working with the legislature to bring this proposal forward. Working together, we can turn this big idea into reality that can change Nevada's economic future forever. And before I just make my last closing sentence here, I want to ask you to remember something different. This is different than anything that's ever been proposed before. This will provide a residential component which has affordable entry-level homes for our residents. The research and development concept, research and development park, companies can locate and collaborate together on innovation and technology, making Nevada a leader, not just nationally, but globally when it comes to blockchain technology. And when we're talking about education and STEAM programs and transportation and energy and medical records, as Jeremy pointed out, what this could potentially do for medical records has been unheard of before. The applications for blockchain are basically limitless. There is nothing that is not on the table and possible. But the thing that impressed me the most and why I am so excited and so enthusiastic about this is we come out of a pandemic, and as we recover and we reinvent ourselves bigger and better than we ever were before, there's going to be a lot of naysayers. I get that. I get there's a lot of people that want to pick apart the proposal, but I ask you to wait, to do some research, to do some investigation. And what Michael pointed out, in the construction phase, 79,000 jobs. If you can think of 79,000 people can be part of this construction, whose wages will exceed $7 billion in our state. 79,000 jobs and $7 billion in wages. In the long term, in the development, it'll have 40,000 jobs that people will be working there permanently with an annual payroll of over $2 billion for those 40,000 people. Those are jobs that we desperately need, that our citizens, our residents deserve, that our young people that are in college and at university are looking forward to. I know this is just the start. There will be a lot more information on this idea in the following days and weeks. Please, I encourage you to ask questions, to keep an open mind. Thank you for joining us at this roundtable today. We appreciate you, everybody.
All right, you just heard from Governor Steve Sisolak, who gave some more details on his plan for innovation zones where tech companies would have the power to develop their own governments here in Nevada. This plan is a way to sort of lure tech companies to our state. And the governor was very excited about presenting his idea. He called it unprecedented. He said that he knows this is a very bold idea, and there are many critics out there questioning his plan, and there are doubters. But he says the goal here is to expand the economy beyond casino, gaming, and the tourism industry, that he wants to bring in more tech companies to our state and diversify the economic portfolio in Nevada. He also talked about this COVID pandemic. He said that this shows how vulnerable Nevada is to an economic downturn, and that's the reason why he came up with this plan. His proposal details requirements for tech companies to form innovation zones that, we mentioned before, $250 million, also develop lots of land, and $1 billion long-term plan. And there was also the Economic Development Office spoke as well, and they presented a slideshow showing that this proposed innovation zone would bring billions of dollars to our economy, over 40,000 jobs, over $1 billion in direct wages for Nevadans. The governor mentioned up to 79,000 jobs and $7 billion in direct wages. As for how this proposed plan would roll out, the mechanics of this innovation zone, the requirements are $50,000 uninhabited acres and $250 million in investments. Again, $1 billion over a decade. And in order to qualify, the legislature would have to approve the application, and the Board of Supervisors would be appointed by the innovation zones, but they won't be controlled by the tech companies, he says. They'll be independent of blockchain or any other applicant. And the tech company will have to report to the legislature on all of the work that they're doing. And the experts also talked about how they came up with their projections of these billions of dollars coming into our state. And they see the revenue estimates are related to processing fees, comparing cryptocurrency to credit card companies when explaining the technology that blockchains is trying to deploy. And we reported about this back in 2018, that Blockchain LLC purchased more than 60,000 acres of undeveloped land here in Nevada. And when the experts were also asked about the environmental impact of the innovation zones, the government says the idea is to have this innovation zone be environmentally friendly with new technology. There were also questions about water shortages from reporters, and the governor said that that's up to the tech companies to figure out for their innovation zones. And the governor says because there are no tax abatements or incentives, that this is really a zero risk for Nevada. And we'll continue to monitor the story for you as it develops. So you can stay tuned. You can keep track of this story on lvrj.com. We'll also have this story for you this evening on our 7 at 7 p.m. newscast. For now, I'm Jen Ah. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I'll see you at 7.